New York and on the new Hot 97 app. Ebro in the morning on Hot 97.
Ebro in the morning, beautiful Laura Styles. Y'all give it up for my brother Lemon. What's your name again?
It's Jesus. Gonzales.
Jesus and Jesus. No, Jesus. Literally, Jesus is here.
Yeah, Jesus.
So your parents named you Jesus.
Nah, my mother calls me Jesus, but everybody who I went to school with was black, so they say Jesus.
There you go.
Short,
There you go.
lost,
I love it.
short story short.
I'm into it. Lemon, how you been, my brother?
I'm good, man. Things are well.
Congrats on
We're
all your
growing and
success,
glowing.
man.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I'm transitioning into great work, so I'm excited because it amplifies and gives more work to our people.
Now, you got 40 Acres and a Mule hat on. People may or may not know that you work with Spike Lee and have worked on She's Gotta Have It Season 2. There was a whole episode that was dedicated to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
You wrote that.
Sure.
Tell me how that all came together and just give us all the details.
Well, I've been on board since day one for She's Gotta Have It. When we turned it into a series, Spike wanted me to come on board and really just, make some of the characters in the show contemporary, especially Mars Blackman. Mars Blackman identifies as an Afro-Latino.
Yeah.
And, Spike gave me the green light to really work on his storylines and work with the actor Anthony Ramos. And I just started penning away. He's great. Yeah, he's
he
a
was
wonderful
here
talent.
before.
Yeah.
Didn't he just win a big award, too? Didn't he just win something?
Well, he's in The Heights now. So
Yeah.
he's the lead in The Heights.
Yeah.
He's doing really great. But he's a wonderful talent. So it was about serving his instrument, I'm a writer. A lot of people don't know that I've been a dramatist for 15 years.
Yeah.
So theater doesn't really transcend in hip hop, but I've always been in the theater. So I know how to work with actors and write dialogue and help build characters, and I was doing that with Spike. And then for season 2, we wanted to bring the show to Puerto Rico because of what happened with the hurricane. Spike grew up with Puerto Ricans. He's beloved by our community. And so he gave me the opportunity to write an episode dedicated to Puerto Rico. I had no idea that we were going to shoot it in Puerto Rico until after the All-Star game. And then I had to fly back and forth. We picked up Jesus as a consultant, and we made sure that we made a real connection. So the money we raised for the episode and the funding that was being given by the characters in the episode was very real.
Right.
First of all, it's beautifully shot.
Thank you.
To me, I think it's one of the highlights of the second season, my favorite episode. And not just because you're my friend. No, it was just so beautifully put together, right? And I loved how it really highlighted so many levels of Puerto Rican culture all together. But that was one of the things when I noticed, I was like, okay, the characters are actually raised money and are giving, money to different charities. When I watched the episode, I'd be like, I wonder if this is real, or I was like, maybe I'm just asking too much.
But it's very real.
In having conversations with you, you actually told me that was very real.
Yeah, that was very real. Yeah.
How did you guys choose these organizations?
Jesus Gonzales.
So before we shot, Lemon and I went, like when the hurricane happened, we was asking everybody and their mama to, contribute, pitch in. Everybody was figuring out how to contribute to the island. We had the Maria Fund, where 100% of the funds were going to organizations. Right now, it supports 36 organizations and initiatives in 40 towns out of 70 in Puerto Rico. It rapidly grew. Raised about $7 million, over 40,000 people. And so some of the groups that you see there are the groups in the episode, and were included in the episode by Spike and Lemon, are the groups that we met through the process, other groups that have been working on like justice for Puerto Rico since way before the storm. And so the support has been significant. The organizations that were included continue to do the work today. And things like, for example, bringing the show to Puerto Rico, hundreds of jobs, majority of the jobs were from Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans from the island.
Yeah.
There were only about 10 crew members that came out. We hired directly from PR. We hired our first AD was from PR. All our production assistants were from PR, lighting. It's the heads of each department just went out there and hired for their team. And it was an opportunity for them to work with Spike. It's part of our service. It's not just about raising money, but connecting. And connecting communities was really vital to us as we were developing the show. We also treated the episode as if the lens was a visitor, right? So it was like you coming to visit our island, and we're going to show you how we live, or how the people live there, and you're the visitor as well as DeWanda Wise, who plays Nola. You know, we wanted to focus on the central character. It was so well thought out, and Spike and I really worked hard on it, you know, to make sure that there was a real connection, not just to Puerto Ricans, but how we were going to connect to the rest of the world. Because Netflix has that kind of platform. It's a global.
Of course.
It was also like, for example, like Anthony Ramos. He's from Bushwick. Like I'm from Bushwick, so it was like personal. Like
East
although,
Williamsburg.
yeah, even just Bushwick. But like his experience on the show and his experience as being Puerto Rican from Bushwick
of course.
was kind of shown like in the like the diaspora going to Puerto Rico for the first time was
that was
highlighted
big too. You know, the African connection was very big. I think a lot of people don't know is that Puerto Ricans, Cubans, and Dominicans are made because of the Middle Passage.
That's right.
And we wanted to highlight that in the episode.
I think that was
it gets lost, you know, that convo around, you know, because you have people from all of those islands who consider themselves white,
Yeah.
right? You have people from those islands who we've seen recently would prefer to even go as far to be Trump supporting.
Yeah.
Very conservative, and go as far as being white supremacists, right? There was a guy in the Charlottesville incident. I think his last name was like Ramos or something. He was Puerto Rican, but he was straight white supremacist. And I think, you know, people don't understand how diverse the islands are, and they also don't understand how these cultures came to be what they are, which is really based on the influence of African heritage, Spanish heritage, and indigenous heritage, right? They don't know, and you could see it when the storm happened, right? People didn't even know that Puerto Ricans were Americans.
Right, yeah. Of course.
That's how
They didn't know
crazy it
where
is.
Puerto Rico is on the map. Outside of New York, Miami's areas of Florida, there's a lot of people most people in this country, unfortunately, are very ignorant. And I tell a lot of my friends that, you know, we call people, you know, in New York, you'd be like, yo, so-and-so is Spanish kid. But really, Spanish is Spain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it is.
Being Latino or being Puerto Rican or Cuban or, you know, more specifically with a Colombian, even your culture, right? It's a whole different thing. It's not Spain. It's not Europe.
No.
It's a whole different thing. And, you know, I think even black folks, there are black folks in this country who are like, you know, Hispanic. They just generalize and they don't know that. They don't know about the Young Lords. They don't know that Puerto Ricans and Dominicans have been a part of the Pan-Africanist movement and the Black nationalist movement since the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? Haitian people and all that just don't know the history because outside of New York, Miami, LA, the big cities, you don't really see.
Yeah. Well, that's
those
the reason
folks.
why they call
Shout
it.
to Chicago, too.
Yeah,
Heavy Puerto Rican.
Yeah, definitely. Humboldt Park is
Yeah.
a special place where you can get jibaritos still. Yeah, you know, there's that real connection there. I think a lot of times I've always been trying, for a long time I've been trying to define our history and our journey here. And you realize that all those islands in the Caribbean were just ports, you know, for the slave trade. And they just dropped off slaves. Then they, you know, made love under the sycamore tree, ended up making Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. I mean, 90% of Cubans are considered African or black.
That's the sweet story, but we know.
It's a nasty, it's an
it's
ugly
a- yeah,
story,
it's
but
ugly.
it's bittersweet. It is
Yeah.
It
bittersweet.
is bittersweet.
Where now another thing that I've watched kind of take place with the story. You all right, Shawnee? Yeah. Oh. Another thing I watched take place with the story after Hurricane Maria and after we saw President Trump be disrespectful in many ways, right? And we've seen an administration be disrespectful. As I started to understand more than I had ever had the, I guess, political landscape of Puerto Rico. Not just the mayor of San Juan versus the governor, and the governor currently is the same guy, right? Who's a Republican,
Yes.
right? And that his father was governor before him, and his father was corrupt before him, right? And corruption from Republicans mismanaging money on the island has been a thing for decades. Yes.
Yeah. So I think just to dive in real quick on that piece, I feel like the hurricane one of the things that we saw when we got there when the hurricane hit, we went like a week after. All the leaves from the trees were gone. It kind of exposed. It was like symbolic that the colonial status of Puerto Rico is exposed. Like a complete exposure on like the response on how the government thinks about Puerto Ricans, an exposure on like the relationship between Puerto Rico and the United States. It's so like,
And even the
painful.
relationship
Yeah.
between elitist Puerto
Yeah.
Ricans and the rest of the island.
Yeah.
Puerto Ricans who see themselves as white versus black Puerto Ricans, and
Right.
Puerto Ricans who see themselves as Afro-Latin. Like that all is exposed now.
Yeah, and then there
it was as simple as it was easy to get there and hard to leave, right? When we got out there, it was a week after the hurricane, and no one can get out. And we had to find a way to get a private plane, and it was at a private hangar, and you got to see the elitists, right? And the difference between the elitists who were there with their dogs jumping on private planes versus the people who were waiting in the public airport and sleeping on the floor, right? And we had to find a way to, you know, a connect basically to fly us back because we were stuck there as well. But you see the difference there, right? You see the social economic injustice that was happening. At the same time, you know, it showed the world who we were and our connection to the states.
the
And
population
basically
size.
what we call is criminal negligence.
Yeah, population size of Puerto Rico is Brooklyn. So just think about like there's 70 municipalities, 3.5 million Puerto Ricans on the island. Over 400,000 had to leave the island after the hurricane. Landed in Florida, Connecticut, New York, even Chicago, even LA and Oakland, like all over the states. And so it can literally, I feel like the debt crisis and the stealing happened before
Right.
the hurricane. What we did see is that right now Puerto Ricans on the what they call the mainland in the states have leverage. They have access to DC in a way that they have access to a Congress member in a way that's not the same in Puerto Rico.
Right, because being a Commonwealth, there's no representation in.
There's a flight in the
DC.
morning and a flight at night, and it's mad expensive.
Right.
Like there's
So you
barely
can't
any
get to-
access to DC.
Right.
And so all these decisions are being made for you, but you never been to DC. And you don't have a congressman. You don't have and there's
no
there's no representation. And so I think that there's like both sides can argue why that's good and bad. I feel like there's because of the hurricane, right now is a key moment where we're calling out the snakes. You know what I'm saying? Like the grass has been blown away by the hurricane, and you can see the snakes now who've been, the hedge funds, the vulture hedge funds, and the banks did the same thing to Greece, did the same thing to Detroit. It's the same players. You know what I'm saying? And so folks are organizing here to be able to cancel the debt in Puerto Rico. There's a big movement right now to cancel the debt. Folks in Puerto Rico are organizing around
But
it.
Trump is not standing next to canceling the debt. From what I mean, he's like, Puerto Rico mismanaged money. They owe money. They owe a lot of people money. We've seen him say that, like doubling down on.
It's their problem, yeah.
Right, doubling down on it. And what's not being talked about is, wasn't there pharmaceutical companies at a time were encouraged to bring their businesses with some tax breaks to Puerto Rico, and that was helping the Puerto Rican economy some 15 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago,
20 years
during
ago.
the 70s, right? And then they moved
that
out.
was something that the government was helping Puerto Rico benefit
Yeah,
jobs.
Viagra was created in Puerto Rico.
Right. So then what ended up happening is states here in the United States got the same benefits that Puerto Rico got. So those companies left and came back to the mainland, which then ended up hurting Puerto Rico's economy. And so some of this debt was started when there was more taxable revenues on the island. Yeah. Am I
Absolutely
articulating
right.
it right?
You are well read.
Right now,
Excellent.
it's become like
yeah.
a tax break haven for hotels and companies. I think there's more Puerto Ricans off the island right now than in the island, on the mainland. And so right now we have like pivotal elections happening. Both sides, Republican, Democrats, are trying to leverage that to figure out they're definitely going to have an impact on the outcome of the presidency in Florida and places like Connecticut. Regardless of how it flops, they're definitely going to have a significant
That's why all the
impact.
gerrymandering and things are going on in Florida. That's why they just stole that election from Andrew Gillum in Florida, because they didn't want to embolden black and brown people down in Florida, because that's a pivotal state.
Yeah.
But it also came close for Andrew Gillum in Florida.
He won. No, he won. They took it
It
from
came
him.
mad close, and this was at a time when Puerto Ricans were just getting there, figuring out their housing, didn't really vote, but some of them did, and you see how how it almost flopped his way.
Right.
And so they're
And so this 2020 is about to be
yeah,
a movie.
Yeah, but the Koch brothers are making them trying to make them the new Cubans, like the new, pro-Trump. There's a lot of money being pushed in Florida.
So the billionaires are swooping in, giving benefits to Puerto Ricans and basically trying to say like, yo, move with the Republicans.
In key states, we'll see it. We'll see it happen. But if we do our job, we make sure that folks know.
We had the Puerto Rican maniacs calling on the show that was yo, we're Puerto Rican, but we support Trump. We had a lot. We saw that a lot, and we was like, y'all know they don't like y'all like that.
Yo, what Spike and Lemon did though was that they brought the conversation to have a platform, 150 countries, millions of people watching the show. They brought the conversation back, like it's Puerto Rico post Hurricane Maria is when Mars went out there, NOLA went out there, and so I just feel like that, just this platform, you guys talking about it right now on Hot 97, folks using their platforms. It just for me, like looking at it from outside, it just like shows that our community can do the impossible. Like we can do, like really look out for each other in times of crisis.
Also keep the conversation
and
going,
keep the
right?
conversation
Part of putting
going.
out work and creating content around the island or whatever's happening. And the same thing is with Guam, right? It's just like, how do you drop a story in there, right? Under this political climate, right? It could be a love story. It could be as simple as that. And next thing you know, there's just this huge world and connection to some truth, and then we amplified again that truth to power constantly. Like it's simple. Part of Puerto Rico is, for me, and my relationship and my dedication to the island really started after the hurricane because I knew that this would be over with soon. That the popularity of raising funds and putting supplies on boats and sending it out would be over real soon. So
Are you guys pro-statehood? Are you pro-independent, Commonwealth?
Independence.
I'm pro self-determination.
Tell me what that means.
I would love it for Puerto Ricans on the island to determine their fate, not us impose like whatever we think is right.
And in determining that fate, it's basically like, what do we want? Let's come together for what is best for us. But that's the problem, right? Is you have people who like the way it is.
I'm pro independence. I like, but I think part of that means that I think that, the Puerto Rico will always be dependent on the U.S. There's more Puerto Ricans outside of Puerto Rico there. Like, do I want to handle UPS? No, but do I want to have a decision on how my community is governed, where the money goes,
Right,
that kind
but
of stuff?
isn't so let's take a step back. The ability for Puerto Rico to do business in the Caribbean with other islands, let's just straight simple business.
Yeah.
Right? If I understand it right, is hindered by being a commonwealth because America can say yay or nay on how Puerto Rico gets to do business. For instance, what was the thing we learned about during the hurricane where cars got to stop in Florida so that Florida could get the Jones Act. There you go. Right? So redoing what you're saying is we got to redo the Jones Act. And
we gotta repeal it. Like right now, Puerto Rico, for example, Puerto Rico got some of the best coffee or beer that they make. They can't even export it to sell it. They're not allowed to. The U.S., like the relationship between the U.S. and Puerto Rico, there was like
it was a military relationship.
It was a military relationship. You can become a citizen, go to war, or come over here. You don't need your passport. You know what I mean? And then so it's like easy access to New York. Like the benefits are like minimal now. Right now you got U.S. companies raping the island economically. Like most 25 to 35-year-olds are leaving because they can't survive. They can't build a family there. Over 200 schools have been closed in the last 6 months in Puerto Rico.
The highest tax rate.
The transportation costs are higher than New York, and then hospitals have closed. Public hospitals have closed across the island. So if you have a kid, if you have a kid or a family, you want access to a hospital, access to a school. You're basically forced to leave. If you look at Hawaii, for example, right? How many Hawaiians are still left in Hawaii? It's basically resort world. to some extent. No, like not to knock what's happening in Hawaii. The folks that are from there are still there, but we can see
they've lost a lot of their culture
similar trends.
Well, so I said this on the air a while ago, and people after the hurricane, people were pissed at me, right? Because I was like, basically, they're gonna take y'all island, just so y'all know. That's what this is. When these floods come through and these hurricanes come through, Hurricane Sandy, Katrina, this is an opportunity for people to come in, swoop down, and take this phenomenal.
There's no more public schools in New Orleans right now.
There's phenomenal real estate, beachfront property, a short flight from the United States. They are coming to get that. Not only that, because you know, and yes, Jamaica struggles, and yes, Trinidad, these countries struggle, but they're their own islands in some ways. In some ways, they're not. But that's a different conversation for another day, as they're connected still to England or whoever kind of holds the bank system over them. However, you have to ask yourself, are these islands doing better by conducting some of their own business and being able to work with one another? Now you have West Africa working with Jamaica. You have West Africa working with Trinidad and these other places, because West Africa has a lot of wealth. Puerto Rico can't make that connection. Puerto Rico can't reach out and do business with the world because you have America in the way. And so you have to ask yourself, will we be better off going out to the market with our exports and the things we have to offer, or are we better off waiting for approval from America to make any move?
It's definitely something that we haven't seen in our generation. You know what I mean?
I feel like when I was over there, most of the young people were pro-independence. A lot of the older folks were still very not ready for it, just not ready for a change.
Because it's gonna hurt.
Of course.
And America's gonna make sure it hurts for a generation. You gotta know that. America is gonna be like, oh, now y'all don't want us no more? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna pull everything.
We're gonna pull everything.
There's only really young people and really old people in Puerto Rico. Like Jesus said, anyone from 25 to 35 to 40 leaves. And so what you see in Puerto Rico are just everyone's grandmothers who were raising their kids in the States and decided to retire in Puerto Rico, and now they're sick, so they depend on America for medication. Mm-hmm. And medication is addictive, and they just keep pumping more ways for you to get sick so you can buy more medication and depend, right? So what we have to do is, when we say pro-independence, is like depending on ourselves, right? Depending on ourselves to earn and export and import our own goods. I mean, we have rich agriculture. Yep. We can raise so much sugar, coffee, vegetables. I mean, we're so...
Now, the farming out there is amazing. Do you see wealthy Puerto Ricans wanting to go back and build infrastructure right now? Because that takes infrastructure.
Yeah.
Because another thing I've learned in my last few years of world travel is building infrastructure means you got to do business with somebody. Like right now in Africa, everybody's always like, oh, the Chinese are taking advantage. These are bad loans. The Chinese are the only ones that don't want to come and take culture, so I'm told. The loans are terrible, but who else you going to get a loan from if you're a developing African nation? You already got colonized by Europe. You don't want to go back to that bank. Who else you going to get? You going to come to America? I mean, nobody wants to do that. So who are you going to do business with? Right?
No,
that's why, the whole Cuban thing happened because of that. Because remember, Cuba didn't want to have America have control. America put the embargo on. Cuba turned and did business with Russia. That started, there was other things that happened. I'm oversimplifying, but ultimately that's where the economy shit got crazy. Yeah. Was because they were like, y'all was taking advantage of Cuba.
Yeah.
Fidel had an issue with that. Was like, you're not giving back to Cubans. This money's not coming back to us. It's leaving the island. We don't want this deal that you're offering. We're going to do business elsewhere. That started it. And I'm telling you, it happened in, is it Mozambique or Zimbabwe? When they were ultimately like, we don't want these European loans. We don't want these European banks. Boom. South Africa, they're trying to take the land back from the white South Africans, right? That was down there that they took the land during apartheid. Recently, we had somebody up here from South Africa. What'd they tell us? The biggest bank closed down like 90 of their branches. Oh, how convenient. Now that we're trying to get the land back to the people, the white banks are like, we good. These branches aren't doing so well. I think we need to go. right? So
now
it's
the
that
poverty rate
money,
is up?
bro.
Has the poverty rate raised since that?
I don't know the specifics,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
about the money.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm oversimplifying clearly, and there's a lot more detail, but that's the convo that you got to have, and that's why older people are like, just chill. Everybody just chill. Let's make sure at least we have access to some banks and some money, because where's the money going to come from? Where's the infrastructure going to come from? And unless that's going to come from somebody bankrolling that, how are you going to do this?
Well, I think if they give us the opportunity to have those conversations, they're always going to be the way. So you have to pull the red tape from whatever America has on this island, right? Whatever the states has on this island, especially with the Jones Act. It's as simple as importing and exporting our own goods. That's it.
Or if an emergency happens, then a boat from Colombia can come and help us, or from other spots, not just let our people not let our people starve, not let our people not have insulin. There was over 4,000 deaths after Hurricane Maria. Like the biggest contemporary
No, there wasn't.
tragedy.
You heard Trump. He said there wasn't.
Biggest contemporary tragedy in the last decade or so, right? And it wasn't recognized as
That's
such. It was more deaths than 9/11.
Yes.
It wasn't even recognized as that, man.
I think
and I feel like
on record, what is it, like 200? It's something ridiculous.
It's pathetic. And then you know what's awesome about the show is that the same people. Yes, there was a mass exodus of hundreds of thousands of, especially younger Puerto Ricans that left, but the ones that were working on the show are the same ones that are protesting the banks, are the same ones that are gonna determine the future of Puerto Rico. Are the same folks, the ones that were working on the show, on the crew, are the same folks that I see that are in front of the bank protesting, Bank of America, Santander Bank, all the profiteers, all the vultures on the island. They're the ones that are holding them accountable. They're the ones that are gonna determine the future of Puerto Rico. I feel like sometimes what I learned real quick is that I'm just like, another hurricane might happen. How do we prepare it? You know what I mean? One thing Puerto Ricans and our homies can do here is make sure that the Jones Act doesn't exist anymore.
So that's a focus.
That is a focus. The other focus is making sure that whatever fake debt is made up, which is at the billions, right, gets canceled. And then also for us to just listen to our people that are there. Listen, bridge that gap, make that connection, because sometimes we think we know what's best for folks, and actually these cats, they know what's best for themselves.
Yeah.
And although I'm Puerto Rican from Brooklyn.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so they know, the Puerto Ricans from Puerto Rico know what's best for themselves. And so sometimes it's literally leading with an ear and figuring out how to support that work. And so there's a campaign, Justice for Puerto Rico, there's a fund called the Maria Fund, where 100% of the proceeds go to support organizations there. But it was awesome to see the connection post Hurricane Maria with this episode, episode 7, right? And Spike Lee, first of all, Spike Lee is loved in Puerto Rico too. We was walking around with him. It was right.
Yeah,
isn't that crazy?
I mean, he's known all over the world.
Right.
You know, this short man with a bright orange jacket. Everyone knows who that is. Right? So when you walk down the street,
He's an icon.
Yeah, exactly. So.
But I do think
And he
it's
got
important.
Rosie Perez super cracking out here back in the day, put on for Puerto Ricans early.
She's also in the episode.
She is. Yeah. She looks great.
She's
great.
in the
Love
episode.
Rosie, man.
Yeah, she's great.
Love her.
Yeah. He's got an anniversary this Sunday as well. He's got a block party going on this Sunday.
Yo, Lemon, Jesus, it's great meeting y'all. Well, I known you, but nice meeting you, and
you,
love all
brother.
the work that you're doing.
Lord, thank you.
And keeping this
Of course.
conversation going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I think that's what this is about. Y'all check out She's Gotta Have It, episode 7.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I need my
Season
t-shirt.
2. Of course,
Yes.
I got you.
And
Yeah,
one more
on the
time
way.
for the people who
Black
want
and white.
more information where they can donate, and they know for sure that
JusticePuertoRico.org
100%.
and MariaFund.org.
Amazing. Thank
Give
you.
it up
guys.
one
you,
time.
guys.
Thanks, fellas. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ebro. Thanks, Ebro.